Around the world and across the ages, this is the end of September edition of the Cavern Today, an Uru Live fan presentation. This is Janathus. The relaunch of Uru Live is another month closer, but for many of us December is still too many months away. Personally, I'm wondering how I'm going to manage to divide all my time between my full-time job, part-time schooling, homework, the Cavern Today, and Uru Live. I'm sure I'll find the time. I'm sure many others will as well. Oh well. Today in our 19th regular podcast, we'll first be giving you an update on the weather surrounding those areas that affect Uru in Cavern and out of Cavern. Right after that, I'll be returning to bring you our interview with Ron Miners of GameTap discussing his involvement with GameTap, Uru, and the community. We're excited to bring you another of Ian Moreland's pieces, this one called The Forest Floor. And finally, Anthony and I have prepared another tech segment, this one concerning audio. We hope you enjoy Podcast 19. After all, it's all about Uru.
Hello, this is Dalton with today's weather report. In Spokane, Washington, it is nice and sunny with a high of 79 degrees. Atlanta, Georgia has been hit with more scattered thunderstorms, but temperatures remain up at 85. And in central New Mexico, after a bout of thunderstorms again this week, today is finally cleared up, showing blue skies and high of 78. Down in the Cavern, temperatures remain warm as we head into the fall weather. The outer neighborhoods hovering around 74 degrees, and the city reaching 77 during the hottest parts of the day. Humidity remains a bit high, but seems to be coming down now. This concludes our weather report for today. And now to Janathus and his interview with Randomos.
Welcome back. This is Janathus with the Cavern Today, and here today with Randomos, or Ron Myers of GameTap. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I've met new explorers on the Demolish Shard, and we expect many to join us when Uru Live launches. Some of our new subscribers may not know what an Uru Community Manager does. Could you tell us what a Community Manager does and how you work to promote Uru? Can you tell us a little about your own background as well?
Sure. Let's see. I started working with the community almost 10 years ago. I think it's 10 years ago in November, and was sort of immediately excited by some of the real potential for people to form new and very positive connections online, and have been sort of enthusiastic about the potential of online community ever since, and especially so, I think, really after having worked with the Uru community. I started out at Empire a number of years ago, and when the opportunity came along to join Ubisoft to work with the Uru community for the original launch of Uru Live, I was very excited and jumped at it, and was lucky enough to be chosen to do that. And pretty much my job, as I see it, is to is sort of twofold. I try to support the community in very many ways, and for me, that's sort of predicated on the idea that the community is a genuine community, that it matters to people, that very important relationships are formed, that people share, good times and bad times and work out things together and come up with creative new stuff together, and that's a very kind of important thing. And I basically try to work sort of also as a communicator, both from within the company, talking about kind of what's coming up, or helping to organize activities or events or something, and also relaying community feedback internally to initially Ubisoft and now GameTap. And I should say too that in this instance now, I'm really sort of trying to peek over Grey Dragon's shoulder. I mean, I think he's doing a great job in leading the community, and is in a very real important position with respect to some of some of the things coming up, both in the storyline with respect to the beta. Certainly, his involvement in the community is very deep. So I'm basically just trying to support him as best I can.
What are the means you use? Like when you said you interact with the community, bring news out, receive input back in. What are the means that you're going through, or what is the medium, I guess, that you use for this?
Yeah, media really. I basically try to do a bunch of stuff. I talk to people in the forums. I try to stay in touch with some of the community members that I've formed ties with over the years via IM and Skype and stuff. I meet people online some too and exchange email. I've been talking to the liaisons a fair amount lately in trying to work with them and support them, because I think that they're a very exciting part of the community now, and the possibilities for them to interact with the DRC are potentially very exciting. And of course, all that's up to Cyan, but I want to support their efforts when I can. And then, internally I make a weekly report that kind of talks about some of the things I've seen and what people are saying and concerns that they might have, and basically try and be as responsive as possible and communicating what's important to the community to, both GameTap and Cyan. Although again, I mean, I definitely see, Grey Dragon as sort of being the lead and on the Cyan side at the very least, and being much more closely intertwined with that.
What is Empire? You mentioned Empire. What was that?
Oh, MPlayer. That was
MPlayer?
MPlayer, yes. That was mplayer.com. And it was a very early interactive gaming service that actually became hearme.com at one point, mostly because people had been so creative with the use of the voice channels in the game coordination rooms that we had, the little game lobbies, that we got very excited about kind of the possibilities for people to be making creatively new experiences. There were all sorts of things. There were sing-alongs and AA meetings and fight rooms and prayer rooms and just and lots of just people chatting, hanging out and chatting. So it was a fun thing to see, and it carried, I think, for me, a very valuable lesson in terms of how important it can be to put tools for creating into the community. I tend to say these words a lot, and I hope I don't get boring, but I've really I'm a believer in terms of the opportunities that the online environments can create for people to have a good time. Making things that nobody's ever thought of before, or things that amuse their friends, or just forming bonds, singing together. So
I almost feel inspired to say the Matrix has you, Ron.
In many ways, it's true.
So do you remember the first time you entered the cavern with other explorers?
I don't, honestly. I don't. It was a while ago. The time that sort of really stands out for me, though, from the early prologue days was there was one time I was in the cavern with Katie and Maztec, and Maz was showing us all these fun things he'd figured out to do, like sitting on top of a cone and just sort of wacky fun stuff. So I remember
fun
that
stuff that Cyan might start writing rules to prevent us from doing, maybe.
Possibly, or rules to facilitate. I mean, I think that Cyan really enjoyed a lot of that stuff as well.
It's interesting to see, because we had a lot of time on our hands, that a lot of people have explored all the various facets of the game just for lack of anything better to do. I'm wondering, once the content starts flowing in, if it'll be like anyone will even notice that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That pans out in the future.
I wouldn't be surprised if it continued, honestly. I mean, I've always sort of wondered how much of that was kind of intended as a way to for them to have fun with people and create something a little bit extra.
While we understand that you were still part of the Explorer community, you were not officially the Uru community manager for a good while during the last couple of years.
Right.
What were you doing during that time, and how did you make your way back to the community?
Right, that's kind of fun. I was with Ubisoft for a while, and helped to kind of tried to help nurture the community, even though Uru Live had closed down, and because it was clear that the community was still very strong and very vibrant. And I ended up after that going to there. And the fun part is that one of the things that had happened after the close of Uru Live was that a number of people had gone to other virtual worlds to stay together as a community, and there was a thriving there Uru community that I
You mean
used to hang
thriving
out with.
community in there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or is
It's a
or
little
is it
tricky to talk about.
Yeah, it's kind of like talk about seeing the movie. I saw. What?
Right, right.
Well, there was also one in Second Life, wasn't there?
Yeah, a Second Life also, I think other places as well, though those were the two primary ones. But yeah, I was working it there for a while, and during that met a gal by the name of Celia Pierce, who had written her doctoral dissertation about, she's Artemisia in the community, had written her doctoral dissertation about how the Uru community had moved as a community to these other platforms. And I think so she was working with the GameTap folks and brought me in. Grey Dragon had also suggested that I might be helpful to the GameTap folks in establishing their own community presence. I think that GameTap has a lot of potential for new community interactions that hasn't been tapped yet. So I'm excited about trying to help make that happen too. I'd love to see ways for people to rate the games that they've played, or perhaps give tips and hints and tricks, or even just kind of nostalgically share their favorites with others and so forth. Some of that actually the Uru community I think is already starting to do. I know that there is at least one thread over at the Guild of Greeters on people talking about their favorite games and sharing them. And I think that that's something that GameTap can really benefit by. At least I'm consistent about this whole community thing.
Well, I mentioned before we started the interview that I favor a old first-person shooter called No One Lives Forever. And,
right.
It's interesting because I'm not a hardcore shooter player. I'm not into like Doom and horror games. I tend to not favor those types.
Right.
So I'm kind of I would like to think of myself as kind of like a hybrid, not all adventure, but not all shooter either. And I thought it was very interesting that I loaded a map that somebody had created for No One Lives Forever, a single-player map, in fact. And it had on the wall of the building a picture from Sam and Max, which is an adventure game.
Oh, wow. Neat.
Which tells me that there is a thread that binds some of us
Yeah.
adventure gamers to that particular... It isn't quite a hardcore, serious game, because it has a lot of humor in it. And it's good to know that we branch out in all various sectors.
It's true, and I think that's very exciting. I mean, there was a lot of crossover. I worked on the Splinter Cell title for a while. There was a lot of crossover. A lot of Myst and Uru fans were Splinter Cell players as well.
That's because that game doesn't require a lot of twitchy reflexes, which makes it a lot easier.
A lot of planning, a lot of puzzles and challenges and solving.
Although I'm loath to say it, I'm actually starting to find that I'm losing out to some of the younger players.
But and two, I mean, I think some of the Uru community has also branched into things like, I know Matrix Online you mentioned. There's the greeters have a presence there, as well as I'm sure others do too, and I know that there are a lot of WoW guilds that are Uru and Myst folk too. So
well, can't help. WoW makes up such a huge portion of that. I just hope that we don't start finding Uru haphazardly following any kind of WoW established patterns in an attempt to draw in a larger audience. That seemed to be the downfall of Galaxies. At least it's been purported to be.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Certainly, though, I think you also have to credit WoW with doing some of the technical things and user interface things very well. So that's it's hopefully we can learn from their best practices without sort of losing our own character.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Since you were there along with the rest of us when the Uru Lights went out in February 2004, I'm sure you felt the same sting of regret everyone did during the last hours of Prologue. And if I remember right, you were busy promoting a distributor-sponsored art contest and concluded after the close of the Shards. what do you think has been learned about online game distribution, and why do you think Uru's online time has come?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, let's see. The to start back in the close of the prologue, the I you know I wanted I saw so many wonderful positive community things going on, and I wanted to, especially during a difficult time for all of us, I wanted to try and help support positive aspects and give people kind of a chance to continue to associate together and build on those positive relationships and so forth. So that was part of why I think we tried to really kind of do some fun stuff right as it was closing. I think too that then as now really the Uru community and the sort of the exceptional nature of the Uru experience offers a real kind of potential that was probably too revolutionary then. I mean, one of the things that I think that's great about the timing now is that in addition to sort of some of the technical requirements that have gotten less comparatively demanding as opposed to then, there's also people are sort of much more aware of some of the dynamics of the existing MMOs and much more kind of familiar with WoW or EVE Online or those others. And I think that, by comparison, Uru really shines. I mean, it's a very different kind of experience. It's unique. It's unique in a way that's unique. So I've just found myself. I did play WoW for a while and a couple of the others, but just the graphic quality of Uru is just so stunning. I'm just sort of in love with it all over again, and I think that people may have an appreciation for that now that didn't exist before. And in addition,
I'm enjoying that hardware has reached such a point that you can run it full featured 1600 by 1200 no problem.
Yeah, and it looks good.
Yeah. And I've taken some screen captures, and some people have actually used those as their wallpaper because not all of our group are as technically inclined or
absolutely
so decisive about the fact that they always have at least a year and a half turnaround on their hardware. Some people are using like 3-4-year-old video cards that they're chugging out these muddy textures, and they don't think there's any improvement with the higher end hardware. Like, oh goodness, you're missing out.
Right. And so I was going to say the other thing too. I mean, I think that Ubisoft's expectations for Uru or the requirements of sort of their aspect of the market, I think that GameTap is in a much better position to support Uru now, and I think that their sort of business model is kind of friendlier. And actually to that end, let me put in a plug. It really is important that people show their support for Cyan by signing up for GameTap or telling their friends or whatever. And I mean, it would be awesome if the expectations for the Uru signups were just completely blown out of the water by the number of people who sign up. But I want to stress how important it is, regardless of your other aspects of the GameTap experience, and I hope that they'll be positive. But Cyan is really depending on the community to show their support by signing up for GameTap. That's a really important thing to do now. And
can you pass along a note?
Happily, absolutely.
Get Real Mist.
I believe they're working on it. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the status is, but
one of the Anthony, my cohort in the TCT Tech segment, and I were talking about it, and he says, "Oh, they sold out of Real Mist." And he's like, "Why aren't they re-releasing or redistributing it?" I'm like, "They definitely should. I want to play Real Mist."
Yeah.
Now that you've gotten used to the real-time 3D Uru, it's hard to play the static versions. It's because it's strange. Like, I can't just run over there and do it. I've got to click. Okay, the wrong click, and
right.
It's weird that I'm becoming that impatient, but.
Well, and our expectations change too. I mean, just the way that the original Myst was revolutionary during its time.
I told somebody, I'm like, well, even Riven's graphics are starting not to hold up, and he's like, bite your tongue, what? And I'm well, it's actually the graphics hold up fine. It's the pixelated 16-bit or 8-bit, whatever it is. Right. It doesn't hold up when you're used to perfect 32-bit across the board and everything you do these days. We've noticed that we're starting to see some more Randomos posts at the Uru Live forum.
Yeah.
Will you continue to use this forum in the future, or do you or GameTap have plans to create another forum or site?
For the most part, especially with the Uru community, I sort of, it's a great way for me to emphasize that my role is kind of supportive, and that the real key players and superstars in the center stage are, Cyan and Grey Dragon and some of the DRC folks and so forth. I'm just here to help facilitate. So, and I'm not really sure. GameTap does have a bunch of community stuff kind of in the works, and I want to contribute to that and kind of encourage more of that, but I'm not sure exactly how it's going to turn out yet. So, but yeah, I'm definitely trying to have more of a presence in the community and let people know that GameTap is listening, and I certainly do relay comments and appreciate them when people bring them to my attention too.
When I was playing with the GameTap client, I found it to be a very interesting layout, and some of it took me a minute to get used to.
It is, yeah.
But I thought it was really cool that they had trailers for everything.
Yeah. Agreed.
So you can go, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I wanted to play that, and I thought it was really good that way.
Yep.
I see that they've got TV shows on there, and I didn't watch too many of them, but that looked like a really good contribution. It's a really good service. How involved will you be with the technical aspects of playing Uru? Will you be working the user help desk, or are there people explorers should contact if we have any problems loading the game or using GameTap in general?
So far, I'm only kind of a backup. I've been very happy to get a lot of positive comments about people who have had issues that they've brought to the GameTap customer support folks. And actually, I know that the GameTap customer support folks are very, very dedicated and wanting to especially support the Uru community. I mean, they're very excited, and for them too. I mean, they're learning about Uru now, and that's going to be a part of their job description in the future. So they think that's pretty good, and I think they're doing a good job. I really do think they care about how the community, the experience that the community has, or the customers have, because that's really, this is probably the best customer service department I think I've ever worked with. I really like them. They're very dedicated and very positive. And of course, if
having worked with them, that means they're not in India, right?
No, not in India. But if people do have questions, I'll certainly try to put in a good word or relay the issues if I can as well. Doesn't mean I can always get a resolution, but I can certainly add my voice if that's.
What? You don't have the keys to the kingdom?
Alas, I don't know what happened to them.
All right. I joined GameTap but decided not to stay for the short term, but I'm definitely going to be in for the long term if we're alive. Now, I experienced a bunch of different services and enjoyed what I saw. Can you tell us a little about what you've discovered at the GameTap Hub? And an even bigger question for our non-USA listeners, is there any plan to open GameTap to international game players?
I'm actually having a good time with GameTap, and it's fun to see some of the games that I had forgotten how much I liked them. But for the international folks, GameTap is in the process of expanding internationally. But in the immediate term, it was clear that the Uru community was definitely international, and that it should be available to worldwide. So, although GameTap won't be available to the international community, Uru Live will be, and there'll be a separate sort of account that they can set up to that people from all over can set up to be able to join in the cavern. They're still sort of obviously, they're still sort of working on some of the technical parts of rolling out the service, especially as integrated with GameTap. But the hope is that all people throughout the world will be able to share shards, and that people will be able to become interact with people from all over the world.
Oh, I thought the intention was that there was just going to be like one place to go. I didn't know there was actually going to be shards still.
Well, I should clarify that. I'm not sure, honestly. I think a lot of things will depend on kind of how the technical folks are able to solve some of the things that they've got going on. but also too, I think there's a question of how popular it's going to be. And I think my guess would be at least that at some point we're going to be more than popular enough that they'll probably need to create separate charts.
The games that we were talking about earlier with
Yeah.
Guild Wars, they have usually, depending on, it's interesting to note that is in the beginning of the game there's a ton of servers, and I
Yeah.
don't know how they expand that, but as you get later on there are fewer servers. But there's still the option to server hop depending on where your team or friends might be.
Yeah. At least that seems to me like that would be the right solution. And I haven't really talked to the Cyan folks, and of course they're the ones who are working on this. But the hope is that everybody will be able to play together.
Does GameTap have any way in which explorers, or does it intend to provide any way in which explorers will be able to communicate news of community events or happenings to each other and potential explorers from within the GameTap interface?
Possibly. That's being explored now. Let's see. There's certainly plenty of creativity in the Uru community, and there's a wonderful channel that GameTap has for all sorts of content currently. So we're kind of exploring all sorts of options about the possibility of creating new ways for people to make use of that from within Uru. And in addition, I don't know. There may well be. I expect that there will be a real sort of explosion of machinima once people start playing with Uru Live, because it's made for it. I mean, with the voice capability and the beautiful graphics and the detailed ability to create facial features and so forth. I think there's a lot of potential for people to have fun making up stories.
Oh, I'm thinking of all these various possibilities that you're mentioning. I'm like, oh god, I'm not going to be able to consume all of that. GameTap was kind enough to offer a free 1-month trial to Uru explorers. Is there any possibility that GameTap will conduct contests or other promotions in advance of Live's launch?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's another thing that's sort of being discussed now, and just kind of what forms those would take. I'd love to see something that rewarded or acknowledged or celebrated the various kinds of creativity, in the Uru community, from graphics to the age builders or the people who write, or even the folks. I mean, one of the things that we did back in the old days at Ubisoft was we had a caption writing contest that was just, that I still regard as one of the funniest things. People really came up with some clever captions to images that they recorded from Uru or whatever. So there's
on the Ubisoft forums, you say?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they're still. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think I do remember that now that I think about it. It's been a while.
It has.
It's funny. I started lurking there gradually, and I, every now and then I'd spit out a little post, and then I'd go back to my lurking, and then gradually I kind of got drawn out. And I think the thing that finally set it in was the podcast. I started becoming involved with them.
Neat. Cool.
And so that's what really got me a part of the community.
Yeah.
But first I was starting to really admire how the community just has this general positive vibe.
Yeah.
And it's some of the stuff is just so cute. Like I saw a post on a.
There's some real sweethearts in our community.
An Uru Obsession. Somebody said they were joking about somebody. Are you saying you can jump cones? And somebody came in with a Matrix-inspired line saying, "Well, what I'm saying is, when you get good enough, you won't have to." And you see this stuff, and you laugh in spite of yourself, and then people in the other room like, "What are you laughing at?" Shh, forget it, nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Before we completely get off of that, or I don't know, just the notion that it really is, people's support of GameTap now is really important for Cyan, and if people can, and we certainly want to empower that, and we're talking about how to make that happen. Either with some sort of referral program or something, but
You've convinced me.
It's I don't know. I want Cyan to have a nice big budget so that they'll have lots of new engineers and artists and things, so that we'll have new ages soon.
I got a piggy bank, I can share. Our producer, Ruby Odegi, spoke with Trent Hershenson about the demographics of the Uru community, how age and gender aren't issues when it comes to enjoying Uru. Do you think GameTap is ready for this dedicated Uru community, all ages, male and female diehards?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised. I think one of the things that happened with the original Uru was that we were surprised at how many people out there appreciated our community and wanted to join it, and I think that that will probably happen again, especially with kind of the offering that GameTap has, the wide variety of different games, and the fact that they're sort of not driven by some of the latest, the latest and greatest market trends, the way some of the other segments of the gaming community are. I think that people will really appreciate Uru. I think in general that there's a lot of very important stuff that Uru offers, both the beauty, the challenges, the gameplay experience, the unfolding storyline, and also the community. From my perspective, again, I mean, I think that this is something that's really very special, and I think that people will appreciate it and probably join us. That was actually ramble a little bit. That was one of the really fun things that I saw there when I was there, was that the Uru community in there sort of very consistently attracted new people in. So these were folks who were members of there who hadn't really experienced Uru before, but who became members of the Uru community after they were exposed to it because of the friends they made in there. And
Is that in the interim between the close down of Live and Until Uru, or was it during Until Uru as well?
During Until Uru, yeah. This is in the last year or so. I was there, and and there were consistently people who hadn't experienced Uru, but because they were introduced by folks in there, really appreciated it and became members of the community. So I honestly expect that will happen. It's I mean, there are reasons that we all appreciate it so much, and I think that there are a lot of people who will share that appreciation when they get exposed to it.
So are there other communities of fans at GameTap you've come to know or will assist? Do we have to share you?
Theoretically, yes. Although, there's really right now the strongest community part of GameTap is really Uru. There's GameTap still has a long way to go in terms of developing some of the interactivity, as well as the long-term, very deep ties that the Uru community has. So I hope to be helping that to happen in GameTap, but at least for the time being, it's all about Uru. So
it's actually nice to hear that. You should just put that underline. GameTap. Yeah. It's all about Uru.
It's all about Uru.
So on the forums, there have been discussion about cavern guilds and storyline. And is there anything you can tell us about whether the guild structure or storyline has been worked out, or whether you, the community manager, will be actively involved in creating and promoting guilds and or storyline?
I know in general that Cyan and the DRC are very interested in exploring some of the ways that the guilds can grow again and become an integral part of the community, and perhaps impact the storyline as well. I think that in general they're very sort of excited about the potential. I mean, certainly one of the things that was clear during the purely Until Uru phase of the community was how creative people were, and certainly the age builders and some of the activities and events that went on really kind of demonstrated a lot of capacity for people to contribute. So I think that's very exciting, and I think that Cyan thinks that's very exciting. My role, again, I mean, will probably be a backseat one as far as the unfolding story. I'm here to support, and it's really kind of some of the DRC and Cyan folks and Grey Dragon who will be more in touch with the story aspects of Uru unfolding, I believe. Which, but I'll be around to take part too, so that'll be fun.
Well, that inspires me to talk about story a little bit. I have this two-way impression of the way things work out in online games. It seems that there are some that are highly story-driven, that you start at a finite point, and that point is always the same no matter who you are. You start there, and that's where you start. And then the story progresses. But we're not being sure how things are going to play out because we haven't really experienced a live Uru.
Yeah.
We're wondering, Just for instance, if a minor tremor shakes the cavern and something changes, will all the new players also see that change? How do you
Yes.
feel about that? Would you imagine that would be a good way to start them off? Like, oh,
Absolutely.
this, you should have been here 2 weeks ago when this
Yeah.
happened. And it's,
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Well, I think that there's, I mean, this is one of the things that's also kind of revolutionary about Uru, I think, is that, people are involved in some level as themselves in the story, and their role in the story is meaningful. And so, as a result of that, the whole premise is that this is unfolding in real time, in our lives, and that means that folks who weren't around last week, will hopefully be told the stories of what's happened, but won't be able to participate. This is an unfolding story that's happening in real time. So, which I think is actually very, very exciting, and the potential for cavern explorers to influence the story is really exciting too. And I think that's again sort of revolutionary.
actually,
Yeah.
that does ring a lot of bells with me when you think about, when you go someplace in real life, whatever happens or has happened
Absolutely.
there has happened or will happen, and you have
Yep.
no control over that. And so
Yep.
Uru is a good reflection of that
Yeah.
extent.
I think so, and that adds a dramatic tension. I think that's really very meaningful and adds to the experience.
Although I can't imagine myself standing around the cave waiting for something to happen.
Yeah,
Something will happen, I just know it will. And it's going to happen at these stairs. That's where I'm going to stand.
yeah. I think that's going to be a tough question from time to time, but uh,
But
yeah.
of course, in my mind, there's the Until Uru experience where, admittedly, there's some quiet times.
Yeah.
And I don't think live is going to be quite like that.
Well, I think too, the Until Uru time showed, how much the community really can contribute. So I think that will be another kind of part of the experience, just kind of what people are able to create within that context or that framework.
You met our producer, Rubio Odigui, back at Mysterium.
I
and
did.
She would be interested to find out what your take on Mysterium was, or your take on
Oh.
Mysterium since Mysterium's been over, and what you envision for future Mysteriums, and
Yeah.
do you know where the next year's Mysterium will be?
Right. I don't, and I haven't been much involved with Mysterium in the past, and honestly had always sort of been a little bit unsure of how much a part of the community I really was, or how much people would want me to be part of the community. And I was absolutely just so grateful, and
Judging by the applause, you're a very appreciated part.
well, it was quite mutual. That was really just wonderful how much I was accepted and welcomed, and it really felt great. And on that note, but I don't really have much of a sense of where the next one will be. Although I would love it. I would love it to be somewhere in the Southwest. I think that would be a lot of fun, and just kind of celebrate the return of Uru.
Southwest, meaning like somewhere near where the cavern actually is located.
Maybe somewhere like that. So.
Randomos, we are excited that you are community manager again, and hope you feel comfortable enough to let us know when you need a little airtime. We'll be happy to give it. And
Thank you.
before we close things up, I'm out of questions at this point. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the explorers that we can expect in the next few months, or anything you just want to say in general?
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be a part of this community, and I think that there are some very, very exciting things coming ahead. So it's gonna be good stuff. It's gonna be fun.
I like that phrase. It's all about Uru. I think you're going to find that phrase will be stolen somewhere.
That works for me.
Well, I thank you for joining us, and hope
It's
to
been
see you
a pleasure.
again.
Thanks very much, and I've enjoyed it, and it's actually been a great chat. I've enjoyed it.
Oh,
So.
thank you. It's been, you're one of the easiest interviews I've given.
Oh, thank you.
And this is Janathus for the Cavern Today, signing off.
Welcome to the Cavern Today's ongoing tech segment. As you know, there are currently and will be shortly some technical questions and issues that some of the Cavern explorers may need resolved. In response to this need, and the boredom of some of our more technically inclined staffers, we have the TCT Tech segment. In these segments, our staffers, the Janathus,
That's
and
me.
Anthony will introduce, discuss, and usually argue the finer points of producing a smooth Uru experience. Today, in version 1.3, we're covering sound cards.
Although I don't even know why we're bothering since everyone is using integrated audio anyway.
Well, you sound like you are.
Carry on.
Oh, come on, not everyone is. Maybe you aren't.
I wasn't.
Yeah, we know you can't make up your mind right now.
Is it my fault that computer games and computer software are so finicky?
No, that's creative. If they can't write a driver worth anything, that's not my fault.
You know, that was not always true. I believe back in the 98 and the 2000 days, I don't remember creative drivers ever presenting a problem whatsoever.
Yeah,
It wasn't until XP came out.
they were pretty solid back in Sound Blaster 16 days. It shows you how far I go back.
Yeah, but Live was pretty solid too.
Yeah.
Sound Blaster Live, that is.
So, we've got integrated, and we've got non-integrated, which are like your card. So, what bennies would you get?
With my sound card, what are the benefits?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, come on.
a lot
You
of
gotta
the
have a reason.
A lot of the audio chores are, of course, offloaded from the CPU to the actual sound card's processor. This, of course, has the net effect of speeding up games, applications that run audio, and producing clearer sound. Onboard audio will every now and then have pops and clicks and little things. And if you have good speakers, like some people, you will notice those
Don't put
pops
down
and
the
clicks.
speakers.
Anyway, the flip side with onboard audio is, of course, the simplicity in system building, but it also, of course, puts more weight on the CPU, as we're discovering with our difficulty in recording Skype sessions.
It's also cheaper.
It's cheaper.
Almost any motherboard these days comes with it.
You know, surprisingly though, I do have a motherboard in my house that doesn't have it. You know,
That's a rarity.
the Intel 875, when the 800 megahertz frontside bus came out in the CPUs. No onboard audio on that one.
Interesting.
The cards in the onboard, you can get up to 7.1 channel surround with both now. But of course that all depends. If you get a $50 motherboard, you're probably not getting 7.1 channel. But you might get 5.1.
I've got 7.1.
Yeah, so do I. But my motherboard didn't cost $50. Still doesn't cost $50.
No, mine cost $100 when I bought it.
But aside from the cleaner sound you get from a dedicated sound card, the slightly higher game performance, which in some games is not even a frame per second in cost gained, or in some of the higher end games like, say, Oblivion, you might get 5 or 10, depending on the scenario. I guess it is kind of hard to justify the cost of today's high-end sound cards. The lowest end of the high-end run above $100, easy.
Yeah.
Unless you're big on shopping eBay.
You gotta be careful there.
We were talking about the old Sound Blaster setup. Sound Blaster
Yeah.
Live. Did Sound Blaster 16 support EAX?
No.
Okay, that came in with Live, right?
I believe so. Sound Blaster 16 was basic. Its main point was it was 16-bit.
And the first one I had was the 512, which predated, I think that was just the generation before the Live, but it was the Live's EMUK, whatever that number is. The designation for the processor on the card.
Uh-huh.
All the versions of Uru Ages Beyond Mist, the Taduni expansion pack, the Path to Shell expansion pack, or the Complete Chronicles, as well as Unto Uru, all support EAX, which helps to filter.
Well, what were you saying?
Nothing.
Oh, yeah. EAX. Now, EAX is an interesting invention. Creative came up with it to help improve the immersiveness of games that used it. Well, you've got several. You see, EAX will take and use the Direct 3D sound system, the 3D positioning provided by DirectX for sounds, to position sounds and figure out where they are. And once it figures that out, the programmer can add filters. Like you have a wall, you can apply a filter to that wall so that if the sound comes through it or bounces off it, you'll get a sound that sounds kind of like what you'd expect from the sound being influenced by that object.
So the programmers are adding filter presets to the geometry built into the game?
Basically.
So I've got an older game where I get into an elevator and the sound has become distant from me, but it's just positionally changed. It actually has not changed as far as the sound quality, even though the door has closed to the elevator.
Yeah.
So EAX would produce a filter there so that once I'm in the elevator, I might hear just snippets or bits and pieces of that conversation.
Yeah, it would muffle it.
Yeah.
And it also create the door sound so they sounded more realistic when those doors on the elevator shut.
So before then, all the sound effects were built into the sounds themselves.
Yes.
And now they're trying to come up with generic sounds and then apply specific environmental variables to the sounds.
That's about right. There were other systems that came before EAX, some more technically advanced, but EAX was the one that caught on.
So EAX at this point, it's a non-issue because we're moving on to an OpenAL architecture, both with Uru Live and because of Windows Vista.
Yeah, well, it's a little more complicated than that. You see, with Windows Vista, they are abandoning the direct 3D sound path, as far as I know. They're going to a software-rendered sound path. So, because of this, Uru had to deal with this problem because it used hardware-accelerated sound in many situations. So they started using OpenAL, which is an open-source solution for hardware-driven sound. It has a lot of similarities in the syntax and structure to OpenGL, which helps when trying to use it between the two. Now, with this OpenAL, it also will support EAX inside of it. So you don't have to lose EAX while using OpenAL. In fact, I think Creative pretty well made sure it support EAX, as OpenAL is right now sponsored by them. Now, basically, OpenAL takes the place of Direct 3D sound. It positions the sound, does all the reflective work, figures out where a sound source is from, where it ends up, what it's going to sound like, how strong, from that point to that other point. And it's supported by several sound cards. But
All made by Creative.
Yes, all made by Creative. It's the Live and Up.
Actually, I think it's the Audigy sound cards.
Oh, you're right.
The driver support for OpenAL on Creative Sound Blaster Audigy cards is currently in beta driver status. Driver support for OpenAL on Creative Sound Blaster XFi, or Extreme Fidelity sound cards, is currently in released form status.
So basically, folks, that means you've got a set of drivers that are testing and might work with the Audigy, and you've got a set of drivers that actually have been tested to work with XFi.
Now, onboard audio doesn't support it yet, which is kind of strange, and it makes me wonder where we're going here, especially with
Yeah,
this
that's a little bit of my worry, because there is no native support as far as I know for OpenAL. It's supposedly an open standard, so should be able to be supported by these other companies, but the fact it hasn't been so far is a little worrisome.
And the fact that Creative has made inroads to, at least I know of one game that has OpenAL support, suggests that Creative may end up with the keys to the kingdom by having the standard that becomes popular again.
Yeah, they make most of the contributions and determine most of the directions it heads in. Now, it's not all bad, because OpenAL has 3 levels of support in it. You've got your basic software emulated support level. Basically, if you got generic software support, sound card, basically, any sound card, it will work on that level. You won't get everything, but you'll at least be able to have sound. Then it's got the generic hardware support. Basically, if you've got a direct 3D compatible sound card, it will support that card and emulate down the sounds to direct 3D API commands equivalently. It'll support fewer channels than it would in normal OpenAL mode, but you'll get at least a reasonable amount of the effects you're supposed to. The last mode's OpenAL native. You've got drivers that were designed for OpenAL, and the card or integrated solution will work with it. And that supports basically everything.
Well, there's also the fact that Creative is now making or I don't know if Creative's making it, well, yeah, they have to have made a software Sound Blaster out-as-you solution, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't really heard of that one till just now.
I
like
didn't tell you about
yesterday. Yeah, you told me about it yesterday, but I didn't have much time to actually look into it.
that? Yeah, it's an interesting development. I haven't read any reviews on how it performs. I'm interested to see how that goes.
So is it completely software, or is it hardware,
Well, it's
integrated
I think it's
solution?
a software, I want to say shell, that runs somehow with integrated audio on some kind of a system.
Interesting. Might be something to look into someday.
Well, it just begs the question, if Vista is favoring onboard, is that the direction that Creative's going to go in?
Well,
And I would think not with all the money they've invested into developing the XFi sound card.
right. The reason Vista went with onboard to a certain extent is they don't see the need for basic system level stuff to need this super hardware accelerated audio. In everyday functions, just your normal desktop use, you're really not going to lose anything through having sound that's routed through the processor with processors as fast as we have. For system sounds and stuff, it's not going to affect much. The thing comes when you're doing games and stuff which want this 3D sound. Now, that's why OpenAL came into existence. Now, there were some small changes with Vista that help to a certain degree with the fact they're going to software sound. As we found out, they're switching from their integer processor format to a floating point. Now, an integer is actually, if you know math, integers are solid numbers. Whole numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using data in that form. Floating point uses algebraic type math to represent things. Logarithms, I believe, if I remember right. And it doesn't store the information as hard-sided numbers. So the main point here is the fact that most processors have better performance when dealing with floating point numbers than integer. They spend a lot of money making their floating point performance pretty good.
So this switch that Vista's making is going to end up with better performance on integrated audio solutions.
Yeah, hopefully by RTM. While this may or may not help in the long run, on technical specs, it will make it better than if they had left it as a 16-bit integer format. Well, you can have all this good sound card and better system for creating sound in Windows itself. It really won't help if you can't hear it.
Yes.
So, you are the one who loves his sound so much. Why don't you tell us about your speakers?
Well, I have a set of speakers that are going on 4 years old now that kick just as strong as they did the day I bought them. And fortunately, I can't recommend them for you because you couldn't find them even if I could. But as far as computer audio systems go, one of the things that I'm finding strange today is it seems like a lot of the high-end speaker solutions are 5.1 or 7.1, and that's it. They don't make a lot of 2.1 systems out there these days. And I wonder why that is. I can't imagine that anyone who wants to get any kind of boom with their audio system is going to actually want to wire up their whole computer room with speakers just to get good sound out of the computer.
Personally, I think they're just after more money, but
Yeah, that's probably a very likely scenario. That's probably how creatives run their OpenAL thing. It's, corner the market before anyone else even thinks about it, and then you have to come to us for what you want.
I
So
remember they pretty well got the market cornered except for integrated solutions already.
I ran a small poll amongst the TCT staffers of who's running integrated and dedicated sound cards. I was one of only, I think, 2 on our staff running dedicated sound cards. And the other person running dedicated wasn't running a creative sound card. And so if you're not running creative, your dedicated sound card is as good as a host-based integrated solution, because only creative has a actual processor on the card. But I digress. As far as speakers go, there are all kinds of up-and-coming technologies with wireless rear satellite speakers, but in some cases they plug in, and in other cases they have batteries. But what I'm reading in all the reviews is there's a distinct latency, making having the rear channels become kind of a pointless situation. I personally think that 2.1 is plenty. 2 satellites and a subwoofer, or even 2.0. They make some really decent 2.0 speaker sets. Actually, Bose has a set. The big movers.
Me.
Pardon?
You shocked me. I don't typically hear an audio file recommending Bose speakers.
You don't think Bose are good speakers?
No, I'm just usually they get slightly insulted when you suggest such a thing.
Bose is actually supposedly, if you ever talk to a Bose representative, they'll say, "We are not a speaker company. We are a development firm." Whatever. Research company. If you had to ask for a recommendation right now, what's the most thunder bang for the buck I can get? I would say it's probably the high-end Logitech 2.1 system, the Altec Lansing 2.1 system, and or the Klipsch 2.1. And those systems are all rated around 200 watts RMS. And except for the Altec Lansing, they all have 8-inch drivers in the sub, which means as high as you want to turn that volume knob is as high as it can go. Whereas previous models I've ran into diminutive subwoofers that can't take how high I want to hear the music at.
Yeah, you gotta be careful though. You can get into some real money if you're wanting good sound.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's M Audio, which is a company mentioned by Tim Larkin in our recent interview. They do some high-end audio equipment and a lot of PC audio equipment interfaces, and they have studio reference monitor speakers, and they have a system that has a subwoofer and 2 satellites upgradable to 5.1, but you're talking about $600 on the table before you're actually able to get the whole system together. I think it's just outlandish, despite the fact that I have kind of an aversion to this 5.1 wired speakers behind me. It's different in a home entertainment setup because you have a living room set up around the TV as a central force, whereas your computer could be in a corner somewhere. 5.1 speakers just don't make sense in those scenarios.
Yeah, you're not going to get that much more out of 5.1s anyways. If you're just doing Uru as your primary game, you're not going to get really anything out of having 5.1s.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that play these shooters and these other online games where they're like, oh, the 5.1 makes a big difference. And the only game that I've noticed position audio really to a great extent was Half-Life 2 and Doom 3. Those are the only games that I've really noticed it in. And in both cases, the sound filtering sounds where they muffle the sound sufficiently to tell you it's behind you is enough for me to get the position of what's where.
Yeah.
And like they always say, you only have 2 ears.
It's true.
So I lack the 7.1 ears to enjoy 7.1 sounds.
I always thought I had good 8.1 ears, but
You're just a geek. You like bigger numbers. Anyway, that's where we'll close up for now. Don't forget to tune in for our next TCT Tech segment, version 1.4, where we'll be covering CPUs and memory. Version 1.4 will be a lead-up to our first TCT Tech segment of the second podcast season, beginning with version 2.0, where we'll cover the entire system integration. Until next time, this is the Janathus.
When are you gonna give that a rest? And this is Anthony,
Signing off.
Well, we're nearly at the end of the podcast. Before we go, we'd like to send a special thank you to Randomos for taking the time to chat with us, and additionally to Supergram for coordinating and scheduling the interview. We'd also like to thank Ian Moreland for allowing us to showcase his Forest Floor piece. If you're curious about his music, or just want to hear Forest Floor again, he has a website at http://sound.ianmoreland.net. Podcast 20 is also due out in October, and it's our season finale, so don't forget to tune in. It's sure to be momentous. One final thank you goes out, most importantly, to our great listeners and fans who make working on the Cavern Today so very rewarding. That's it. This is the end of Podcast 19. We hope you've enjoyed it. This is Anthony signing off.